Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so figured I'd rapid fire some basketball talk, man. I enjoyed doing that yesterday. There's some things going on in the NBA that I think are worth talking about since we're getting closer and closer to the NBA season. About halfway through the preseason right now for most teams. Lakers got a game tonight with Golden State. We talked about that earlier. Encourage everybody to go check out my pregame video for that if you're interested. Yeah, there was a trade made, a smaller trade. Jaden McDaniels' brother from the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is Jalen from Sacramento. He got moved to San Antonio along with, I think, a second round pick or something like that, some future asset of some sort. And was then expected to be waived. I don't know if that's gone through or not, but it's expected San Antonio will waive him. And essentially why that's important is because it looks like the Sacramento Kings are interested in maybe acquiring a contract star level player. I've heard Zach LaVine's name, which is crazy to me, absolutely insane. And I heard Brandon Ingram's name, which makes a lot more sense. So that's the thing about Sacramento, man. They really are a wild card in this situation because they are firm believers that it's time for them to win. And they're also firm believers that they can't attract a single soul to actually come play for them. So when you had that going on, they're like the other team. You know, I told you guys that I saw the one trade that I saw Zach LaVine potentially making any sense to me was the Washington Wizards. But there was one more team, and it was the Sacramento Kings. And the tea leaf that gave me that notion was that about a year, maybe some change ago, the Sacramento Kings were interested in trading for Bradley Beal and his no-trade clause, which is a bad contract of catastrophically horrible proportions. But Sacramento really does have a win now timeline, and they probably are a piece away. And so when you consider the fact that they are damn near impossible free agent choices, nobody's ever going to choose them as a free agent choice, they are the one team that'd be willing to take on the worst contract in the world. You know what I mean? Because they firmly believe they're never going to get anybody unless they acquire them already under contract. Which to me, I think it really underestimates what you expect them to really be able to accomplish. I think they're downplaying their market a little bit by taking on the worst contracts possible. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that at all. And so, you know, that's their point of view, though. They're going to take on one of those two players that are likely going to look to be on contract for a while. So a guy like Zach LaVine doesn't really have a choice. He's stuck wherever that contract finds a home. You know, it's that kind of thing. And Brandon Ingram's looking for his money, and it doesn't look like New Orleans is going to pay him. So it's one of those situations where he'll also be happy to be in Sacramento if they're willing to give him that contract that he's looking for, and maybe they would be. So I don't know, man. I think Sacramento is in a very unique spot because most teams in their situation probably are not trying to win right away. You know what I mean? Most teams that have that type of market issue are in a rebuilding stage, or already have everything under control, and they still really are, in their minds, a piece away. They got DeMar DeRozan, they got Sabonis, they got, you know, Keegan Murray on a rookie contract. You got some nice role players that have played well over the years. You know, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Jesus Christ. So it's one of them situations where you honestly wonder if it's going to make sense for them to just go on and take on a contract like that. You know what I mean? If they can take on a Zach LaVine, they have him on contract for 4 years, 3 years, 4 years at a crazy amount, but it seems to be something that they can work into their equation. So I don't know. As good as Zach LaVine looked a couple days ago, I don't think I'm a big believer in him really being worth that contract in any way, even if he plays it up. Problem is, if you're a team like Sacramento, maybe you think he's exactly what you need next to De'Aaron Fox to have you a high-powered offensive situation. DeMar DeRozan doesn't really shoot the three ball. Maybe he provides a great deal of more gravity around the perimeter. Couple that with Keegan Murray's gravity. Maybe that's the right piece for them. Maybe that is the right piece for them. A good combination of athleticism and shooting. And then, by the way, they really don't care too much about defense. Although they have players that can play a bit of defense. I think of a guy like Keon Ellis, who's a good defensive player. I think of a guy like Keegan Murray, who's a sneaky good defensive player. So Domantas Sabonis can rack up some steals, finds a way to contribute on that end. So even in them punting the defensive end, they still have lineups that they can go to that can get them some defensive play. So maybe they can withstand the lack of defense that would be coming from a Zach LaVine a little more than maybe most teams would be willing to under their circumstances. So all things considered, I guess you got to enter them into an equation that makes sense for Zach LaVine. I didn't see it yesterday when I made a video about it, but when you break down their circumstances and their idea about themselves, it's probably what it makes sense for them, to try to just bite the bullet on that contract. I don't think it's a contract worth having, but I mean, if you just believe no one's ever going to come there, no matter what, you're never going to get a single free agent, then of course you got to take the stuff that nobody wants and try to make good on it. And I don't think that's unfair for them to look at themselves that way, because Sacramento's a very tough place to get people to play basketball. It really is. Even though they've had some good years, it's kind of hard to see them in a space where they're just, gaining some free agent that everybody wants and they get to win in the bidding war on them. Not as long as they're in Sacramento, it's very difficult to see that happening. So, if I were them, I'd probably prefer Brandon Ingram. It's a bit more of a steady contract that you'd pay him. If you're paying him what he wants, it's not a good contract, but it is a better contract than Zach LaVine. But I don't know what role necessarily he plays for Sacramento. That's a player who does a lot of ISO stuff, tends to be best at the 3-ball spot, maybe some 4. So, what is he doing? Who is he scooting out the way if you're bringing in Brandon Ingram? If I'm being honest with you guys, I actually think Zach LaVine is probably a more seamless fit for what they already have. DeMar DeRozan can play some 2, but at this stage in his career, you probably want to scoot him up to the 3 a bit more. So, Zach LaVine comes in and be a solidified 2. He's pushing out the way, Keon Ellis. That's not too difficult to see. Keon can play some 1 as well, if necessary, mostly a defensive player. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox in place. You think about the rookie that they just picked up. What's his name? Carter, I believe, is who they got. Nice energy player, but not expected to stretch the floor. So Zach LaVine shooting the 3 and not playing defense kind of matches what it is that ultimately is the opposite of him. So I think Zach LaVine probably makes more sense for Sacramento, to be honest with you. I think he really does when you consider the fit and consider what their point of view is. Now, contract-wise, like I said, I just don't think he's worth that contract. I don't expect him to stay very healthy. But when you consider having enough backups to keep him healthy or give him enough opportunities to rest from injury, I think Sacramento has plenty of guards to where if Zach goes down 30 games a year, they still have plenty of shooting guards to keep them above the fray and let him get 100% healthy. So that's really what you're looking for in a situation like that. You don't want to be relying upon a guy staying healthy. It's kind of what I said about the Philadelphia 76ers. They're relying way too much on people who are not great bets to stay healthy, to remain healthy in order for them to be an NBA championship contender. I think if you're trying to take on a guy that has injury issues, you don't want to be so reliant upon him staying healthy for your victories. And I think that's the problem for most situations for Zach LaVine, but maybe not the problem in Sacramento based on how their team is constructed. So this is not going to last, though. A lot of what they're benefiting from is the fact that some of their most important players are playing on rookie contracts. They're going to have to pay those guys or let them walk. And as those years progress, especially that final year for Zach LaVine where he gets a chance to opt in, that could really mess with their ability to hold on to what it is they ultimately have. But you're assuming at that point DeMar DeRozan, maybe he's moving on, he's getting a little older at that point, maybe he's retiring. Maybe you could see a world where he steps in. Guys are able to step in and take what DeMar DeRozan's otherwise making and stay with the Kings. So, all things considered, if they make a move like this without giving up anything substantial, I don't know what the damage would be on the trades. When you talking about getting Zach LaVine, you got to match salary somehow. So something's going out if you're Sacramento. I haven't done any thought on that. But I don't know what they have to match salaries. That's what comes to mind. I just don't know. I don't know. That's a lot of salary you're trying to match to get Zach LaVine. It was like $40-something million a year right now. So what are they moving is my question. And I have to look on the trade tracker to really know. But assuming they're able to keep all the stuff that we referred to, which the more I think about it, the less likely it feels. They might have to let go of, I don't know how they do that. And see, that's the thing. It's like when you really start thinking about what Sacramento has to move to match salary, I have no idea what they would be willing to move. Because De'Aaron Fox is on a big contract, Sabonis is on a big contract, and DeRozan's on a big contract. Obviously, Chicago's not taking DeRozan back. They just traded him 5 minutes ago. So what am I missing? What is on their books that they can move at a decent contract that doesn't deteriorate from what it is that ultimately makes this make sense? I don't really know. I really don't know. I have to look at that. I'm in the absolute dark when it comes to Sacramento's books. Maybe they got a bad contract I'm not thinking about. But I don't see it. I don't know where that's coming from. So that's going to be a big thing. If Sacramento can find a way to match salary, that's cool. Maybe they have a trade exception that can kind of eat away at that. Maybe they can make some moves with their first round picks, try to trade for some trade exceptions or something. I don't know. They have to get really creative to make, especially in this collective bargaining agreement. I have no idea how they're going to, what that looks like. My mind is not telling me anything other than they have to move Sabonis, which is crazy, in doing that. So I don't really know what Sacks gets to do to make Zach LaVine make sense as far as the books are concerned, but if they can pull it off, I think from what I'm looking at, that looks like a pretty cool situation to move him into. So, they're a playoff team. They want to win. And they lighten beams and all that different stuff, trying to set the culture so that people will look at them as a winning franchise and maybe wouldn't mind coming up there to play ball with them. We look at them like Minnesota's, how they've been able to change the culture up there. Not to say that they're a great free agent pool place, but once you build enough of a cachet as a place that people love to play basketball in, maybe it can help you overcome the idea that people won't go to your market. You know what I mean? You create a great enough culture and people will dream about playing ball there because they know they can win there and they know it's in a history that they're establishing. So, it's tough when you got a small market. You got to get in where you fit in. And I think Sacramento's trying to do that. So, I'm not mad at them. I don't love what it is they're forced to do, but that they're forced to do it ain't their fault. It just is what it is. So, more power to them. Hopefully they're able to pull off the Zach LaVine contract without giving up something that kind of makes them still a win-now team. Because like I said, if you have to rely upon Zach to stay healthy in order to win, I don't believe it's worth it. I really don't. And as far as Brandon Ingram's concerned, I just wonder how he fits. To be honest with you, I wonder how he fits, because maybe it makes more sense to try to trade for his salary since it's a little less, but I just look at him as an on-ball kind of guy, needs the ball in his hand, ISO. You already got that going on with DeMar DeRozan, so you're asking some guys to kind of take turns. Maybe they can force those guys into playing a different style, and have Sabonis be a hub of some sort to create plays for others. Everything's circling around him making plays, which he's more than capable of doing. De'Aaron Fox is a nice playmaker as well. So I think what they're doing in this situation is just slapping a lot of talent together and just believing they can win with it. That kind of thing, regardless of how the play style has to be figured out. They just get a bunch of good pieces together and run. So, fit has a lot to do with a lot of things. Chemistry, play style has a lot to do with a lot of things. And if they're foregoing that, they will fail. That's really what it comes down to. You can't forego that. So, yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see if Sacramento's able to pull that off, man. Or maybe a third option comes about that we don't see coming. But I'll tell you this. If I'm the Clippers, I'm also trying to do something. I don't know if James Harden is fully comfortable in Clipperland. Kawhi Leonard starting the season with the knee injury as usual. That never goes away. I just don't. They opened up the building yesterday. They won their game against Dallas, a preseason game. The building looks nice. The acoustics are great in there. It's a nice building. Question is, can they have something in there worth watching? And they do got the role players. We've mentioned this many times. I like how Kai Jones is fitting in as one of their bigs. He looks like he's being real serviceable for them early on. Still young with upside. Looks like he's got his head on straight at this point. Infinity money. So, we'll see if that makes sense for them in the long term to continue to develop him. I like Kobe Brown, as you guys know. I had forgotten Chris Dunn is now on that team, so that's a good role player. Derek Jones Jr., also fantastic role player. Kevin Porter Jr., I think he's going to continue to work on his development from here. Kind of had some setbacks, but already shown a lot of signs of being a high-level player in this league. So, Clippers got some stuff, but as long as the core is Kawhi and James Harden, they're not going anywhere. They're just not, man. And that's what it really comes down to. And you got all the other stuff, but your stars ain't straight. I think they need to be shopping some of them dudes. And I think it would be in their best interest to try to figure out if they can find a way to get one of those two players that maybe Sacramento's going after. I don't know Zach LaVine is an upgrade, but Brandon Ingram is somebody I would want if I'm the Clippers, man. Replace one of those two stars with B.I. I think they'll be very pleased with that. Now, if I'm New Orleans, I probably have no interest in bringing in Kawhi Leonard or James Harden. I'm not. But I'm not talking about it from the New Orleans standpoint, and maybe you get a third team involved to make all that make sense. But the point is, I want those players if I'm a Clipper fan. I don't really want to go forward with James Harden. James Harden is not who he's going to be asked to be this year. That's not who he is at this stage in his career. So, I was listening to a conversation this morning. It kind of makes sense, and it ties in with this a little bit. It's the idea that the Dallas Mavericks gotten better because they brought in Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson's a Hall of Famer. Klay Thompson won a million championships. Klay Thompson's one of the great three-point shooters. Problem is, does that mean he can actually do any of that today? And I don't think so. I think the answer is no. You can bring in a great Hall of Famer who doesn't have it anymore and ask them to be that player for you and ring off their resume like that's supposed to will them into being that productive for you today. But it ain't going to change the fact that that's not who they are anymore. And so that's how I look at James Harden and Kawhi Leonard to a degree. Kawhi less so because Kawhi's game is always the same. He just doesn't find himself healthy enough to really be a threat like he needs to in order to be a number one or a number two. He hasn't been capable of being that since he left Toronto, in my opinion. But you still see him being a high-level player so long as you're not relying upon him too much. But for me, it's like James Harden. It's like you can ring off his resume, just like you can do with Klay Thompson, and tell yourself that you got the great James Harden. That don't mean that he's going to give you the production that he gave the Houston Rockets, which is what you ultimately need him to do if you're the Clippers. So I just think the Clippers are hoping that James Harden can be that guy. And the evidence tells them that they shouldn't be hoping that at all. Like, there's no reason to even think that. So that's my point of view on James Harden, man. I don't doubt he can be a nice facilitative guard. But putting the ball in his hands and telling him to bring you home is silly in 2024, man. It's absolutely silly. And that's exactly what Ballmer's doing. And they got good role players. I like what I saw from Terrence Mann in the moments that I saw him play as well. They got a deep team full of nice C-level guys. Just like they had before they got Kawhi and Paul George. You know what I mean? But now that Paul's in Philly and they're relying upon James Harden and Kawhi Leonard to be their stars, those guys are great by name. Name-wise, yeah, but if we're going to do that, why don't we just ask Gary Payton and Magic Johnson to come out of retirement? Like, put them on there and talk about their resume. Like, what the hell they got to do with 2024? That's exactly how I feel about Kawhi Leonard. Exactly how I feel about Klay Thompson. That's exactly how I feel about James Harden. They ain't got it like that no more. No. If you ask them to have lesser roles, they can be serviceable in those roles. Kawhi maybe is your number 3. James Harden is like a number 5. And Klay Thompson, man, he's a role player. I don't know if he's ready to be that. He was also on that floor yesterday opening that building with the Clippers as a Dallas Maverick. He looked terrible. He looked terrible just like the last time we saw him, he looked terrible. So I don't know what people expect from Klay Thompson. I don't know if this is, it's still preseasons, blah, 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 but he looked like that in the playoffs. Here's the injuries have just eaten away at him, and he's not finding it. It's not there. I don't know if it's there to find, to be honest with you. I think the Lakers may have dodged a bullet because he chose to go with Dallas. He'd have been out here eating up 25, 30 minutes, bricking like that. We would have been wanting him out of here quickly. I know how Laker Nation is. We don't play like that. So I'm kind of glad at this point, if this is how he's going to look from here on out, I'm glad he closed Dallas Mavericks. We dodged a bullet. So that's really what it is. That's why I always tell people I'm not interested in digging in the past for my talent. I'd rather go with young talent. If I'm looking for a star, I'd rather go with a guy that's less than 26 years old, 27 years old, especially if I'm going to pay him a lot of money. At the end of the day, it's just better to have youth, in my opinion, than to watch a guy fall off in your uniform or think he's going to continue doing something just because he did it yesterday. That's not how that works in a lot of cases. Especially if injuries are starting to pile up and tell the story about the dude. That's just not a smart move, thinking that you're going to get the most out of him. You're not. Or whether the most ain't going to be enough. So that's really what it comes down to for me, man. I think the Clippers need to be going in a different direction with their stars. I'm moving both of those stars for whatever it is the market will give me, man. It's addition by subtraction. They don't have their own picks, which is not in any way, shape, or form ideal for the Clippers situation. We've talked about that. Because they don't have their picks, they can't just simply tank. Because if they tank, their picks are elsewhere. They just send a great player somewhere else. And they don't really have the assets to reacquire their picks, wherever the hell they're at, probably in OKC. You don't have the assets to reacquire those. So you're just kind of stuck, you know what I mean? You got to get whatever you can get and run with it. And that's probably why they're running with these names and these good role players, because that's about as good as they're going to get. The problem is your future just gets worse and worse and worse as you continue to go forward that way. You do better trying to capture value for whatever you can that's worth any damn thing. If Sacramento's out here looking for Zach LaVine, then I don't see why they wouldn't be looking for James Harden. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my attitude. Maybe they're looking for Brandon Ingram. I don't see why they wouldn't be interested in Kawhi Leonard. That's how I'm thinking if I'm the Clippers. It's worth a shot, because I'm telling y'all, their ceiling is trash. It's not very high. I think this is a decent season to get more out of them than you will going forward as you continue down this path with them. It's only gonna get worse from here. So, yeah, man, that's my little take on the Clippers. Ain't a new one. We've had this conversation before. But I do like the role players they have around them, which is a damn shame. They're probably going to have to move some of those guys and make it make sense. But, yeah, man, that's the attitude right now. I think, as I was telling you guys, I'm looking forward to seeing what Golden State puts together. I think they're in a much better position than those other teams that we're talking about, because they still have Steph Curry, for one. And I think they have some of their own picks, and even if they don't, some of the players they're relying upon are just getting started. So there's a future there. You can see a future with Trace. You can see a future with Moses. You can see a future with Kuminga and Podziemski. Those guys, they're their own starters when they become who it is they're ultimately going to become. You don't have to look far for your next generation Golden State Warriors. So their situation is a lot better than Sac or Golden or the Clippers. So yeah, these are things that we're thinking about. I think I think somebody should look to acquire McDaniels. I can think of a couple of teams that have wing issues. I know that he's not expected to be a high-level wing, but I think there's still some upside there. I thought that he played some good ball with the Charlotte Hornets about 3 years ago and has gotten lost on different teams that just didn't need him. But I do think that there may be a home for a guy like Jalen McDaniels, and I would not write him off as somebody who should be out of the league at all. I really wouldn't. I think there's some teams out there who could use him. A team like the Clippers or Sacramento Kings might want to just take a flyer, see if he can do something in their uniform. I think he actually would, obviously, with the Kings, so never mind that. But San Antonio, and that's another thing. San Antonio waived him. I thought that would probably be a decent place for him to play. I know they have some wings. They're probably going to eat minutes, but they do have a situation where they could use more youthful players on their team. So I don't know if moving on from him so quickly was really the best choice, or maybe just bring him in, see if you can have him play in a couple preseason games and then waive him after you know what you have. So I don't know, man. I think that's probably how I would have played if I was San Antonio, acquiring Jalen McDaniels. I just don't think that I don't think they could hurt from having him stay. I don't think they have any plans to do anything with that roster spot, really. So I don't know. What do I know? But that's my point of view on that. A team that's interesting to me right now is the Detroit Pistons. I think they've made a nice jump. I think they acquired some really good players to help their situation. What's his name? Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Ron Holland. Stepping into the fold, I think doesn't hurt. I'm not a big Malik Beasley person, but Lord knows they needed somebody who can stretch the floor, and Lord knows he's going to shoot. And he make them or not, I don't know. But he's not going to do much else but shoot, and I don't think they need him to do anything but that. So I like what they have there. Ron Holland's having a good preseason. He looks good. Jaden Ivey's continuing to develop. He looks very good. Cade Cunningham's probably going to have an all-star season if the team is not bad. Jalen Duren looks really good right now as well. So this is a lot of stuff about the Detroit Pistons that looks pretty promising at the moment. And even though their spacing could be better, I think they have a situation where they might have brought in enough to try to offset some of those spacing issues. Tobias and Beasley will help with that. Fontecchio should help with that. So I just think they have an overall cohesive basketball team as to where last year it was complete opposite of that. And they should be fairly optimistic that they can make a jump this year. I don't know they make the playoffs or play-in tournament, but you're talking about a team that could probably win about 10 more games this year, which is substantial as heck, considering they only won like 12 games last year. So that's what I see there. It's just a team that makes a lot more sense with more spacing. Got to see what's going on with Ausar Thompson because he's coming back from the blood clot situation, but he is one of the most deadly future small forward defensive athletes in the game, in my opinion. There was a point in time last year where his numbers were identical to Franz Wagner, believe it or not. That time didn't last a very long time, but there was a time where I was trying to figure out if it made sense to either keep Franz or pick up Ausar off the waiver wire on my fantasy team. No exaggeration, no joke. He was playing that well. So you got to appreciate what he can bring to the table. That's what I want to say. I just think that Ausar is kind of a lost guy in that situation. But with the addition of those shooters, his piece may be able to settle into what it is that you ultimately want him to do a bit more. And his upside is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, you talk about Ron Holland, talk about Ausar Thompson. Those two right there alone provide them a very serious tandem of athletic, defensive-minded forwards. And if Ausar can continue to work on the shooting, for which when he was drafted, they said he was improving upon, if he could be a competent three-point shooter at times, that may be all the space he needs. So I'm a big believer in Ausar. If the Pistons were to trade him, I would be a buy low candidate. Trying to get him right now, you know what I mean? I definitely would. While he isn't yet turned into what I know he's going to become, this is the time to try to see if you can kick the can on a trade for a player like that. Because the upside and his basketball ability is imminent. As it pertains to him being a good player, it's imminent. He's going to be good. So long as the blood clots don't get in the way. So you're not going to find a time when his value is any lower. They say the same thing about his brother. It's just you want both of those players if you're any team in the league. I can tell you that right now. And you just bring them to you and wait on them. So that's what I see there, man. You got to there are teams out there who I think have opportunity with what they have in their asset class, coupled with just where they're at in their development stage. They can really go do something like that. And they're not thinking like that, and that's okay. I mean, everybody has their own vision. But for me, I just, too many times in my life, seeing players that I knew were going to turn into something, and people just didn't pick them up when they were of low value. And then when they became what it is that I knew they were going to become, now all of a sudden everybody wants to pay them an absorbent amount of money. It's like, you could have got that player at a tenth of the price if you would have just got him a year before he became this. But none of y'all want to do that. Y'all keep on waiting until something blooms and something is a sure thing before you're actually ready to make something happen. And you pay for it. I cannot stress it enough, And it could be the difference in really having something great put together on your roster and just having an okay team with some really good talent. Because you're paying top dollar for something You know what I'm saying? After it blooms. No, you want to find it early so it can be a part of a super team while you can still fit other contracts next to it, playing at a high level. So I just keep preaching that on my channel, and hopefully somebody listens to me and goes after some of these high level upside dudes that just look like they're going to turn into something. A guy like Anthony Black is a prime example over there in Orlando. He's not getting no minutes. He's one of the best on-ball defenders in basketball. You're not going to find a guy who's more capable of guarding multiple positions than Anthony Black. He's damn near big enough to guard a center, and his natural ability is point guard play. Like, if you don't go get him out of Orlando while they're trying to figure out who's going to be their next point guard, man, get him. The dude is huge. You put him on your team, and he makes everybody better, and he's able to help rebound, and he's going to lock up people on the other end. It's like, yo, man, don't wait till that dude starts showing what he can do. Hear me and go get him now. Go get him out of Orlando now, because Orlando don't know what they have. They really don't. They asking for point guards when they got this guy sitting on their bench not getting the minutes after they drafted him in the top 10 last year. Go get him. They don't even know what they got. They probably don't even have any plans of playing him much this year. Go get him. And because I think like that, I just feel like I'm going to have a better team than most, because I'm going to find stuff before it blooms, not afterwards. And if it doesn't work out, cool, move on from it. But a lot of stuff that I think will work out has so much of a nice floor in regards to what it can do, that I'm still going to have a pretty good team, even if it don't bloom into what I think it's going to. You know, look at high floor, high ceiling talents that not getting opportunities. That's what you do. So, I don't know, man. I just think the NBA is full of that stuff all over these benches, all over the league, and some of these GMs are just not thinking like that because they're too busy trying to chase yesterday's player and some sure bet to be good, which is not a sure bet in a lot of cases because of the wear and tear on a lot of these guys' legs. You know what I mean? You're going to pay Paul George $200 million to be what you need Stuart Thompson to be. Yeah, it's like all you had to do was aim for a Stuart Thompson. Like, you get the same production. Obviously not a parallel because Paul George stretches the floor. That's not a literal thing. I'm just saying, like, that's really what the idea is, though. Instead of going after all these old guys trying to run these roles, find the next best. Bring him to you and develop him properly. And get him while his value's low, man. I can't stress it enough. If you GMs do that, it can make or break your career. It really can. Y'all still trying to look for these older guys. They're just not that. So that's really my point of view. I think, you just got to canvas the league, man. I think Brooklyn has a couple of those guys as well. You know, a guy that I'm curious about if he's going to step into his own is Cam Thomas in Brooklyn. Because he's really shown signs of being an elite scorer. But for whatever reason and situations they have him in, coupled with the fact that they don't really win a lot, it's almost like he's a weapon untapped into, I guess is what you can say. That's a real scoring weapon. If you're a team that has problems scoring from behind the arc, you need somebody who can create their own shot. Target that dude. Target that dude. If I'm the Clippers, go target Cam Thomas. Go get him out of Brooklyn. That's probably somebody you can acquire. You know what I mean? That type of thing. Because he is an extremely gifted scorer, man. Like a way above average scorer. Maybe he doesn't have some of the intangibles to be a whole lot else, but his scoring is going to create such an impact in the right situation. And he's not in the right situation. He's in Brooklyn. They're not doing nothing in Brooklyn at all. I think of another guy in Washington, Corey Kispert. You need shooting? Why don't you go after a Corey Kispert? He can shoot his head off. But he's in a losing situation. Nobody's paying any attention to him, but he can really shoot. He just needs to get the hell out of Washington. You know what I mean? And so that's what I mean by having an imagination if you're a GM. If you have an imagination, you can find these pieces. You'll bring them to you. Now, something I didn't mention today that is going around in regards to my own team is the Lakers having interest in Nick Richards. And we've talked about Nick Richards on this channel, maybe as recently as a week ago. And of course, just like everything else, it's about the price tag. I think if the price tag is second round pick, Nick Richards makes a lot of sense. But if the price tag is first round pick, then I'm throwing my phone out the window if we do that. You see what I'm saying? Do I want Nick Richards? Sure. Am I delusional about what Nick Richards is? No, Nick Richards is a role player on one of the worst teams in basketball. He's a good center with a lot of size, but not a great center. You know, he's not a starter. He's like a Jackson Hayes-ish type guy. You know what I mean? So I'm not giving up a Rui Hachimura to get him. You know what I mean? I'm not giving up nothing real to get him, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to make a hard push to get him. I'm just not going to be willing to give you a crazy, souped up amount. I was listening to Laker Nation this morning, and one of the guys they had hosted was talking about he didn't really want to give up a first round pick for Nick Richards, but he was willing to. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? Like, if you can get a first round pick for Nick Richards, then we need to start shopping Rui Hachimura for 2 first rounders. So we need to start shopping Jackson Hayes for a first rounder. We need to start shopping Jalen Hood-Schifino for a first rounder. You see what I'm saying? It's like, it makes no sense at all, just because you need a certain type of piece, to pay such an absorbent amount for it. Because by that logic, if first round picks are that easy to acquire, then why the hell don't we start fleecing teams for them, with some of the players that we have that are at that level of Nick Richards? You know what I'm saying? By this logic, I should be able to get 2 firsts for Colin Castleton. You understand what I'm saying? I should be able to get a first round pick for Max Lewis. If we're going to just be throwing around first round picks for role players and developing talent, I mean, you got to value what you have, especially if you only have 3 of them to trade. You only have 3 first round picks to trade, and you telling me you're going to give 1 of them up for Nick Richards? Your team is going to be bad, friend. If you're running things, our team's going to suck, because you're mismanaging our assets in a very irresponsible way. Stop underestimating what a pick is. He said something along the lines of, I would be willing to trade a first round pick, but maybe not Gabe Vincent. What the hell are you talking about? I would trade Gabe Vincent for a first round pick right now. And you're telling me you'd rather move on from one of the few first round picks we have and hold on to Gabe Vincent? You think you know what you're talking about? Man, stop it. Stop it. You know, I get it, man, and I'm not trying to. I don't want to be so disrespectful as to crap all over somebody who's got a gig or whatever. But if that's the stuff that they're coming up with, man, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm just being honest with you. They may be good on TV, but they're not good at what they're doing. They need to not talk about trading stuff. They don't know what the hell is worth what. They don't know how much they should value what they have, and they're going to suggest things that if people listen to them, they're going to fail in doing. You never underestimate the value of a first round pick, especially under this collective bargaining agreement. You don't do that. If you know you have 3 first round picks and a need at the center position, then that first round pick needs to be going for talent that is above the level of what the pick is worth on the rest of the market. Now, granted, picks can be worth various different things. Sometimes you have a pick and be worth, a great player because you remove protections from it. Other picks, you put top 16 protections on, and it's almost worth a second round pick. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of various levels to that. But as far as me giving away anything in the damn first round, it's not going to be for a role-playing center who's not much of an upgrade from all of the other centers that I already have. Christian Koloko, Nick Richards, Colin Castleton, Jackson Hayes, they're all in the same tier. These are all in your same tier. If I can get a first round pick for each of those guys, we can get ourselves out of this hole. You understand what I'm saying? Hell no, you don't trade a first round pick for one of them dudes. Not if you know what the hell you're doing. So that needed to be said, man, because that's a video that's going around Laker Nation this morning. And I'm just like, yo, man, please do not lead our fan base. We're already in a space where we're willing to do stuff we have no business doing just to get close to good enough. Don't suggest stuff like this, man. Because if somebody really listens to you and does this crap, we're going to suffer for that. It's not a good decision. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not willing to trade Jalen Hood-Schifino for Nick Richards either. Jalen Hood-Schifino was the 17th overall pick less than a year ago. About a year ago, rather ago. That was the guy that you would take in the first round. You do not attach him to get a center that is not even good enough necessarily to start for you. You don't do that. That's a first-round pick. Now, he's not equivalent to a first-round pick because you obviously can't trade him for a first-round pick, but his upside can eventually play up past what it is that you're giving him away for. So if you give him away while everybody thinks he sucks, and you're bringing back something that everybody knows only has but so much upside as a role-playing center, second, third string center, you have mismanaged your assets. And these are the mistakes that make a team terrible, man. This is stuff you cannot do. Especially in our situation where we don't have a billion picks from which to trade. No, you can't do it. And so somebody needs to be the voice of reason when it comes to this type of stuff. And I'm glad I was able to stick that at the end of this video, man. That's not minor, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's not like, oops. No, yeah, oops that. Don't oops that. We only have 3 of them to trade, man. I'm definitely interested in getting Nick Richards, but I'm not confused as to what it is he's supposed to be for us. He's a role-playing center. He's another center that's tapped on top of the other centers that we had. And maybe you can move on from, you know, Colin Castleton because you don't need one no more because you brought in Nick Richards. That's all that is, fam. He ain't some great, you know, starting center that's just going to have so much upside that it makes any sense at all to give away somebody who could potentially be a real player on your team. Once you give away a first-round pick, that's not just a player. That's the choice between many players. That's the thing about a first-round pick. And a lot of people look at the pessimistic side. Well, it could bust. Yeah, it can also be a great player. You know, I heard a name this morning that kind of put that in perspective. A guy like Tyrese Maxey for Philly. You give up a 22nd pick or whatever the hell he was, and you had a chance to draft him. Yeah, that pick could have been some terrible player, but Tyrese Maxey was there too. The choice to be able to choose between that player and Tyrese Maxey is ultimately what you're trading away. And you're going to trade that option for Nick Richards? That's terrible odds when you consider what it is you're actually doing. Believe me, Philadelphia would laugh Charlotte off the phone if they offered Nick Richards for Tyrese Maxey, bro. Obviously. But even when he wasn't becoming who he was on draft night, hell no, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. Now, if Nick Richards had the upside of a Jabari Smith or Ausar Thompson, okay, yeah, maybe we think about that. Okay, maybe. But, like, come on, fam. He don't have that type of upside at all. He's just a really good role player. Of his caliber, he's one of the better ones of his caliber, which is why we want him. But we ain't about to be stupid as to say, well, yeah, let's bring him in for something that's valuable in the market, only to find out that he's only what he is and then try to retrade him in the market, find out you can't get nothing for him. No, friend, you don't bail anybody out that way. That's exactly what we be doing. It's bailing out the Charlotte Hornets in that way. You can't get no first-round pick for Nick Richards unless somebody's willing to do it. You know what I'm saying? And by that logic, you might be able to find a patsy to do even more. By that logic, let's keep on shopping everything we have and see if we can get some crazy amount for it. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I gotta say this. Jalen Hood-Schifino being traded at this price as a throw-in for a role player is malpractice. I don't give a damn how many ill-advised Laker fans tell you he needs to be thrown in a deal to get a role player. That is malpractice and mismanagement of assets. He was the 17th overall pick. He's a big guard who can facilitate and should develop, because he's only in the fresh 20-year-of-age range right now, should develop into something much better than he is right now, unless we botch that. If you're giving him up, you better bring back something of that ilk. Period. Because for your situation, Lakers, you can't afford not to. I was never the big Jalen Hood-Schifino guy, but I was also not confused about if he were to be acquired, when I should be considering making sense giving up on him. And it certainly isn't after 1 year, when he only played 1 year of college as a freshman. No. If you want to trade Jalen Hood-Schifino, bring me back Anthony Black. Bring me back Ausar Thompson, although that's not an equivalent, because of course you'd rather have Ausar. But that's not the point. You bring me back something that has that same thing going on. Don't bring me back some role player. Because I'm not certain Jalen Hood-Schifino doesn't become much better than a role player, especially if we develop him into what it is he was supposed to be drafted to be. I understand he's not very good right now, but his ceiling is not to be underestimated, and definitely not to be forego just so you can get some role player, man. Nah, that's stupid. That's mismanagement. And too many franchises mismanage their assets and then find out why they suck is because of those decisions. Nah, man. No. I try to be the voice of reason when it comes to stuff like this. We are not trading away a 20-year-old big point guard so I can bring back some second-round center who's like in his 4th year, who's proven he's pretty good. That ain't the upside of Jalen Hood-Schifino, the 17th overall pick just a season ago. Hell no, that ain't his upside. You're trading him for a third of the price. So that's what we talking about, man. We ain't letting people slide on stuff like that. I know this isn't a Laker video, but this applies to every single franchise in the league. Don't mismanage your assets, man. It will be the difference between your team being any good and not. Video 44. I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.